So James, you're kind of local.
Yes, Mamaroneck, just about 30 minutes southwest of you.
How long have you been here?
I've been in Mamaroneck for 6-7 years now. From New Jersey originally, so this is all tri-state area home to me.
So what is most breaking in your world right now? What interviews are hottest? And
What isn't breaking? So and Project Veritas is investigative journalism, and all journalism ought to be investigative, but we're not really attuned to the day-to-day manic pace of politics and news. We're focused more on kind of long-term investigative undercover projects, and we have a number of folks around the country, actually dozens of both insiders, sources, and full-time employees scouring to lay the villains low and to knock the bleeding crap out of the people who are corrupting this country.
so recently you've done exposés on Google. You've done a fair amount of tech work. You're on Minds now, which is awesome. What do you feel like are the biggest problems with big tech?
The biggest problems with big tech are that the powers that be are not honest with the American people about what they're doing. I just want people to be honest. And it's trying to get to the truth. If their intention is to swing elections or to modify algorithms to achieve some legislative solution or advance some political agenda, the problem is they're not being honest about it. So we just want to bridge that divide between how people behave in private and how they project themselves in public. I don't advocate solutions. I don't know what the solutions are. There's a lot of people in Congress, that's what they're supposed to do all day. I think that we don't agree on what I agree with what, I think General Mattis said this recently, former Secretary of Defense. He said, people don't agree on what the problems are in this country. And they're so busy figuring out what the solutions are, but we don't even have a consensus around the problems. So Project Veritas seeks to inform the people, I think to create a sphere of consensus, to unite the people around information, and hopefully we will agree upon more than what we all think we agree upon.
So of the Google leaks, can you take us through the ones that you have and which ones you feel like are the most shocking and impactful?
Well, the most shocking thing about what we do is video. Sometimes people need to see.
Yeah.
You can have all the data and information and code in the world, but an executive on tape, brazenly confessing that they want to change outcomes of elections. This is Jen Janai in June, saying we want to prevent the next, she called it, Trump situation. And I think the fatal conceit of these tech companies is they think the outcome of the 2016 election somehow proved that they had failed in their mission somehow. And getting her to admit this and getting her to say, I don't care about Congress. They can bring me to congressional hearings all day long. It's not going to stop what we're doing, said Jen Janai. That was probably the most shocking revelation. But in terms of documentation and the insiders, Zach Voorhees, a Google employee, willing to be attacked legally, come out and give documentation showing machine learning fairness. I thought that was pretty shocking. The documents showed that Google was trying to implement what they called fairness, machine learning fairness. Even if information is true, Google search products don't want to show it to you because the truth is offensive to people. So this document, you would have called me a conspiracy theorist if I would have said that what they were doing was what they were doing, but the document showed otherwise.
Do you think that it's a clear bias against conservatives, or it's more of an anti-authoritarian bend? Because we see a lot of alternative media sites being blacklisted by Google across the political spectrum, not necessarily just conservative sites. I mean, on one of Zach's docs, I think Media Matters was even on one of the blacklisted lists.
It was.
Yeah.
That's a good question. The definitions of conservative are changing as well, and populist. That's a conversation about labels, I suppose. But what was remarkable about some of these insights is that it was probably cultural Marxism with the machine learning fairness. It was like, for example, the document specifies that if there are majority male CEOs, Google would have to use quote-unquote product intervention to augment and reach broader societal efforts. So it was like something out of a Huxley or Orwell novel. It wasn't literally we're going to swing elections, but what James Damore, and I've talked to some folks about this, what they've taught me is that these subtle attempts to censor information, and if the CEOs are 90% male and Google makes it look 60-40, that affects how we view the world around us. I don't know about you, but when I Google search something, I just want to know what the facts are. And we can talk about what we want the world to be, but I think people need to know that when they're searching for something, they're not getting reality, they're getting what Google wants the world to be like. And what's most remarkable is that Google may be perjuring themselves in Congress when they're asked about this and they say, we're not doing that when they are. So the most important thing we need to have happen is we just want honesty from these folks.
Yeah.
And we're a nation of laws, and people shouldn't perjure themselves.
Do you feel like you're sort of flipping the game on them? Have you ever heard the term surveillance?
No.
It's basically when you surveil the surveillors.
Watch the Watchmen.
Watch the Watchmen.
Yeah.
Do you kind of feel like that's part of your mission?
There was a book in the 1970s called Typewriter Gorillas, and this is before the age of video, when all they had were typewriters and newspapers. But yes, there is an aspect of I call myself a guerrilla journalist, that we're a small, dozens of folks taking on the most powerful tech company in the world. I mean, its market cap is, I don't know what it is now, $1 trillion, $900 billion, and we're nothing. What are we? We're like a peanut. We're an ant that could be crushed taking on Leviathan. But there's definitely something to the fact that Google fears Project Veritas more than Project Veritas fears Google, because these tech companies do not want to bring attention to what we are exposing. They haven't sued, for example, at least not yet, have not sued any of the insiders that have gone public. They haven't, to my knowledge, sued Greg Coppola, Zach Voorhees, Eric Cochran at Pinterest, who now works for me full time. None of these folks have been sued, even though they leaked information and gave us documents. And the reason I would suspect that is the case is because they don't want to bring earned media attention to the revelations. And by the way, it's not a good idea for corporations to sue whistleblowers anyway. So it's a very interesting dynamic. It's gone back since the mid-20th century, when muckrakers were taking on power and viewed themselves as guerrillas.
Yeah, there's something very karmic about Google having to worry about the people in their own company, not just Google, all of big tech who's potentially corrupt, just, worrying about their own people with their own devices. Maybe you're even using their own devices against them.
There was a front page Wired cover story that a Wired reporter talked to 47 sources within Google, and it was remarkable seeing this shift, because the Google employees used to be loyal to this creed, and the company was all about transparency and giving people freedom. And now the workforce has sort of risen up, and they have a lot of problems right now. There's a lot of antitrust discussion. The employees are leaking constantly. They had these meetings where the CEO of Google and his executive team would have Q&A sessions, and now they're just become a press conference because everyone's leaking and instant tweeting. So I think the good news is I don't think they'll be able to stop us. And 2 years ago, people would have thought I was a maniac if I said I was going to launch these bombshells on powerful people. But that's what journalists are supposed to do. They're supposed to speak truth to power, and we're not going to stop.
And you guys are growing quickly.
We're growing very quickly. In fact, every interview I do, I make a pretty aggressive pitch for employees. We're constantly hiring. We're doing two things. We're hiring full-time undercover people that anywhere in the country you can work full-time for us. Wear one of these little cameras and infiltrate, and we film as our medium, so we definitely use hidden cameras. And then number two, we're looking for brave insiders. We're looking for people who are one of those small, vocal community in the United States who are willing to actually lose their jobs for a cause. Not be an anonymous source, you could do that too. But if you're on the inside of one of these companies, we want to work with you, and we'll have your back. We'll sometimes pay your legal bills if we need to, but we believe that there's a need for people on the inside to step forward and demonstrate that moral courage, and that's sort of our new campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I think we share a lot of values in terms of transparency. We're psycho about transparency. Everything we do is open source. All our financials are open source, public. I mean, sunlight disinfects, whether it's the media, news media, technology. I feel like the largest organizations of the future are going to have to be transparent, or they're going to die. Yeah.
Like, we were talking about this. I don't know if the cameras were on yet, but as the CEO of Project Veritas, this is something that I have struggled with, even in the past amongst my teammates. I say, guys, we have to be transparent about what we do. One of our ethics rules at Project Veritas is, I call it the 12 jurors on the shoulder rule, is that whatever you do, always pretend like there's a jury in the room watching your activities. And investigative reporting harms people, right? We were talking about that upstairs. Someone loses their job, you embarrass someone, people are humiliated, and rightfully so. But there's the benefit to society, because you have to look at the purpose behind journalism, the purpose behind the First Amendment. In a democracy, people cannot make informed decisions unless they have access to information. So there's always that balancing that harm to people. But what I tell my staff is, always feel comfortable with your methods, and always know that your methods will be made public, either in a lawsuit or someone will leak,
Yeah, there's a strange thing about that, because you want privacy, you sort of have a right to it, but at the same time, and there's a chilling effect to how you behave publicly if you feel like you're constantly being watched. So that's a little bit strange, and so that's why the right to privacy is important, but acting as if we're always being filmed is a safe thing to do. It's coming,
it's
yeah.
the future.
Yeah,
so as George Carlin once said in his comedy skit, that when they talk about the plastics and effects on the environment, and George Carlin said, one of my favorite lines, he said, well, there will be a new paradigm, Earth plus plastic. So it's like, okay, everything we do is going to be filmed or exposed. How does that affect human behavior? Well, it'll just affect human behavior. And how does that manifest? Everything we do is going to be exposed. There are some exceptions, and I follow Matt Drudge's lead. I don't do stories on what people do in their bedrooms. I think that there are certain laws that we have to have in a democracy. We can't. There are some certain intrusion upon seclusion that are just not acceptable, and there are some places I won't go. I don't do stories about people's sexual habits. I don't do stories about things of a personal, private nature. But it's inherently situational. We have to remember that the public's right to know, and in some things the public must know. And it's the future. Everything, we've lost our privacy, and I would argue that's probably a good thing, because the people that's affecting most are the powers that be, are the big tech overlords, and coming soon, a media network. You'll see an expose on that as well.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.